Okay. Let's see if this is working better at all. Um, yeah, it seems to not be frozen now, so that's good. Yeah, so it seems like all the stuff that I was doing up until this point is unfortunately not there. Um, yeah, but that's, I guess, what it is. So, yeah. So I'm using a different way of doing it than I normally do. I'm using just my phone to try and live stream it instead of doing it through my computer because I'm set up outside today. Yeah, and I'm trying to see if I can make that work. So here's hoping that it continues to work like it seems like it is right now. So yeah, you missed some of it, obviously, because it was being super weird. The painting of the undertone for the skin and the sleeve there, you didn't miss much, really, if we're being honest. Is there anything I said that was important to this picture? Right, the outline is something that I had done when I originally did this drawing. Because this is an old sketch of mine. So I did that in waterproof Copic fine liners because I was working a lot with Copic markers, and so I wanted it to be able to stay nice and clean and crisp, even though I was planning on going back and coloring it later. Now, the thing about that is this is watercolor paper, not like marker paper or sketch paper, so that's also why I chose this sketchbook and this drawing, because I knew it was on paper that could handle the ink being painted onto it. And I'm pretty sure that's really the main highlights of what I talked about before. Other than that, it was a lot of random babbling. Talked about the fact that I was outside and how you might hear my family in the background every now and then because I'm not in the studio, so they are actually around and talking, and how you also might hear my dog because, of course, outside is his domain, and he is a dog, so he likes to bark. So you'll see that every so often, more often than maybe you're used to if you do watercolor, I'll have to go and get more paint. And that's because I'm not working with paint, I'm working with inks. And so inks are, they kind of are what they are. You can water them down, but the pigment that they are is the pigment that they are. You can't, there's not really that much variation. Whereas watercolors, they're just like a pure pigment. You choose how much you want. They can get really dark if you layer them. Inks aren't really like that. If you want a darker ink, you have to get a darker ink. So they're not quite as versatile in some ways, I'd say. But also in some ways they're kind of more forgiving because what you see is what you get. Like that color is that color, and it's gonna be that color. There'll be some variation. I find, especially with the Ecoline ones, there is some areas where the undertones come out more on some of their inks, like the beige one. You'll see even on her face, like here it's more green and here it's more pink. And that was just one straight coat of a color. So there are inconsistencies in the drying and in the color, but I kind of like that. That's part of why I like the brush work with the inks and the watercolors. It's for that inconsistent texture and feel that the medium gives. That loose freeness. Now my lines, I don't normally do like black lines like this anymore so much. But like I said, this is an old sketch. So yeah, because a lot of you guys, you voted for getting me to paint something, but then some of you said that you wanted to see something new. So I thought do a little bit of both by painting something old that maybe you haven't seen, or if you did see, it was like a really long time ago. So you kind of can get the best of both options. At least that was my hope. Yeah, so just like when you are working with watercolor though, you need to wait for each section to dry, otherwise they will bleed into each other. I mean, if that's what you want, is you want the sections to bleed into each other, then, you know, go for it. But if you don't want that, then you're gonna have to be patient. And it's kind of cold outside and pretty humid, so it is kind of against me at the moment. I do have this here to help me kind of choose my colors, which is nice. So that's like all the inks that I own of the Ecoline inks anyway. I have other brands as well, but since I'm outside, I decided to just stick with one kind, just to make it a bit more easier for me to pack and move around. So even though like the ink is what it is, you can still water it down the same way that you do with watercolors, especially Ecoline because they're water-based. So they water down really easily and really nicely. Some other like acrylic-based inks and stuff, you can still water them down, but it's just not quite as, they don't dry as nicely or as smoothly, I guess. I mean, I'm just like focusing so hard on all these little curls. It's been a long time since I've actually drawn Sigrid's hair this way. Yeah, this is I don't know if I said that in the beginning of this video or the end of the last one. Okay, anyway, I'll say it again. So if this is a repeat and you've already heard this, I apologize. He says hi too. Yeah, I'm glad I got it working. I just had to restart it. I'm not really sure what happened, but I guess restarting it fixed it. So probably was just like a glitch in the Wi-Fi connection or something. Being that I'm outside right now, probably not the best the connection has ever been. I completely forgot what I was saying. Um, right. So yeah, Sigrid is a reoccurring character that I made up. She's a Viking, basically. I drew a picture of her a couple nights back. She was the Viking woman that was running with all her hair flying everywhere. It's nice to have just like a couple set characters that like you know who they are and what they look like, so that it's easier for you to kind of design new things or try out new mediums, things like that, which is part of why I like having Sigrid and a couple others that I have. It's probably also because I spend a lot of my time just living in lots of fantasy situations, you know, video games, books, TV shows, anime, movies, all that. So it's kind of hard not to like come up with your own ideas. It's fun. And it's something to do to fill time nowadays. So that works out too. I think this was, yeah, this is the one. Yeah, so this painting is very simple compared to my larger paintings. I'm trying to not get it too complicated because I don't want it to take a ridiculously long amount of time. Usually my sketchbook is just full of general ideas. So if I were to color something in my sketchbook like this, for example, it would be for like basically a concept to give me like a rough idea of what colors I wanted to see if I liked them before I went on and did a better piece of art later. It wouldn't be my final piece. So it usually would end up being pretty simple by comparison. Just testing some colors. Anywhere my sketchbook is painted, you'll see a lot of the backs of pages have these kind of swatches. So your hair's got like too much of this pink hue in it, because even though I painted it with a brown color that I watered down, I guess that brown had a pink hue to it. So another nice thing about Ecoline is because of the water-based nature. I sometimes, which I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to do, but sometimes I mix them with watercolors. I'm gonna say I'm a rebel without a cause. Now I want a something bright and colorful for the baby, I think. This was actually one of the first times I started drawing babies. Let me tell you, babies are tricky, and so I was always trying to not draw too much of their body or face. Thus, the copious amounts of blanket. So I was like, you know what, I don't know what to do with this small human. The proportions of them are just so weird. Because it's like you gotta make them Michelin-y, but like you don't want to have them too much like a little Michelin man, because like then they look weird. You have to have their heads be really big and round, but then they have tiny hands. Like everything you know about proportions and you try to do for proportions for an adult, do the complete opposite, and that's a baby. I need a bit more. And in case anybody is wondering, yes, this baby does have a pointy ear. She is an elf. And no, the mother does not have a pointy ear. She is human. Why, do you ask? Because this is not her birth mother, but rather her adoptive mother. I know, that must have been a burning question for all of you. I do what I can to satisfy the questions of everybody when it comes to completely random and unnecessary information that nobody was asking. Okay, some of these get like really stuck on here. And I really hate it. That's like my biggest complaint about Ecoline is that the packaging is hard to open after it's already been opened once. So overall, I don't really have that much to complain about. This is actually my first time painting with water, with water or an ink in this book. I've like used watercolor paint pens in the book before, not actually like a brush. It's actually quite nice. I didn't like it because I used to use only like hot press paper because of how smooth it was. I believed that was all I wanted to use was smooth paper, but it actually turns out that's not all I want to use. Oh no. I actually prefer cold press because it takes the water a bit longer to soak in. It gives it a bit more workability. Yes, I know the baby looks ashy. I actually did that on purpose because of the kind of elf she's supposed to be. So, read up on your elf facts. Just kidding. These are elves that I completely made up. So, wouldn't be able to read up on it. yeah, so looks like I'm just doing the finishing touches now on these little pattern. And then yes, I know I was going to keep it simple, but I can't help but just do a little bit. There needs to be just a little bit. Now this is a very unofficial painting method where I just kind of use whatever color I have left on my palette. So with a darker color. See, but now I'm running out of this color, so this is why it's an unofficial method, because now I need to add a bit more. But because it's a blue, I'm going to add the blue into it a little bit too. Yeah, the Ecoline colors are really nice. I love how colorful they are. See, this is where it starts getting like a little bit messy, because when you color on top of it, it lifts the color a little bit, right? But I kind of like that myself. And I don't like it just being super boring in one color. I like it having more, I like it being messy. That's really the only way to say that, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to bring this into the baby blanket as well. And the parts that are the shadows. See that? I should have let that dry more before I went in there a third time, but you know, whatever. The paper started to fray. But this is just a sketchbook, so it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. Oh, Winston. Winston agrees. I should have let it dry a bit more. I think just having like a little bit of shading just makes a lot of difference, you know, like it just makes the whole piece come together a bit more. I always shade right here at the root line. And just a little bit on her skin. The baby is still not dry, so I can't actually shade the baby at all. It just won't work. Cause see, like, look at that. See what's happening? Because I got too close to how wet it was. Wow, that was super dumb. Ugh. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to fight with that for a while and hope I can fix that. See, like, you can kind of blend it out as it's happening. And the colors down here got muddy. I'm used to working in a much more warm and less humid environment, so this kind of didn't go my way. I did a bad job. But overall, you know, could have been worse. And I'm pretty sure I can fix the things that didn't go well. But yeah, overall, that's the majority of it. Once this is all done actually drying, I'm going to do touch-ups, and then I'll post the completed piece. Thanks to everybody who joined.